Dwarven Realms is the ultimate number go up action RPG. Relatively relaxed combat with a seemingly limitless amount of ways to progress your character and an actually limitless amount of power growth to activate your dopamine receptors for dozens of hours for $10. It recently had its 1.0 launch and has improved and grown a lot since early access. I've been playing it almost non-stop and have logged 50 hours already, streaming it for several days and playing it to 2 AM a couple of times. You might ask, but isn't this game just like a pretty simple grinder? And I might respond something like, then why is this video however long it's going to end up being, and why have I barely slept in the last 48 hours, Well, it's pretty simple on the surface. It's actually got a lot of stuff to do and figure out. The more I peeled back the layers of the number go uppery onion, the more I found underneath. It just keeps going. I was already considering making a guide for it, but I wasn't really sure if I could dedicate the time to it, so when the developers approached me and offered a commission to make a guide, I found the time. So, thanks to the Dwarven Realm developers for that, and also thanks for only including a minimum duration for the video and not a maximum video length in the specifications. Forgive me any loopiness in this video. I've been up late a couple days in a row working on this. It's a lot. So let's get into it. I'm not going to give you the basic tutorial like press button make man move, because the game has that. The bulk of this guide is endgame focused and more about making sense of the sensory overload of stuff that happens and numbers that go up. But here's an overview of the early game and 7 lucky tips. But this guide's way too long, so what's the TLDR really? If you just slim it down. If that's what you want, I don't know why you're watching a massive guide, but kill stuff, collect all the stuff, make all the numbers go up, and repeat. It's really very simple. It's just in the specifics that things get a bit more complicated. What stuff can you kill? Where do you collect all the stuffs? How do you turn stuffs into numbers? Which numbers should go up first? When do you find the time to do anything but make the numbers go up? And who will stop you from making the numbers go up? And so on. I'll answer some of those questions. So the main continent is where Dwarven Realms teaches you the basics over the course of 35 ruptures with a few boss fights sprinkled in. You will regularly unlock new gear types, new skills, and new things in your fortress. Honestly, so much stuff. Take some time to familiarize yourself with them as they come up. This tutorial segment is pretty easy, so feel free to advance quickly without any grinding really. You can even use the later unlocked feature to skip and do a few levels at a time if you can. Don't worry, everything before that you've skipped gets auto-completed. You don't actually miss anything doing this. And now some tips for the early game, progression, and getting yourself into endgame. First, you can enable auto-attack, so you don't have to click and hold the mouse or spam click by just double-clicking and then letting it go. But this actually also works for the skills as well, the stance weapon skills. And once you get enough energy regeneration, you can spam those stance weapon skills endlessly as well. That's something you'll tend to build for typically. To deactivate the auto casting, just press a different skill or click once. Tip 2 is for main stats and the passive tree nodes while leveling. Strength for flat damage and endurance for energy regeneration, enough to spam a stance skill. That's really the simple 2 main stats to focus on. For the passive tree, you can go to the War Strike notable. This just gives a bunch of damage. Infinite Wind, which gives a bunch of energy in combat. This can make it so you don't actually have to invest too much into endurance. And then Colossal Force for strength, which is also damage. Now, all 3 of these are blessings. They activate on hitting an enemy. So they won't be active while you're sitting there in your hideout unless you go like whack one of the target dummies or something. This very simple combo of stat attribution and passive tree node blessings gets you really cooking in the early game. From there, you can go wherever you want, wherever takes your fancy. I'm not going to go all meta and tell you the best builds in this. And really, so many things are viable in this game anyway. Tip 3, gearing and crafting while leveling. While leveling, do utilize crafting. A small handful of crafts will actually make a huge difference, but you don't really need to go overboard. Recognize that most things will be replaced after a few more rupture levels. Look for or craft gear with raw plus flat damage, strength, which is also damage, energy regeneration until you can sustain your preferred skill, and crit chance and crit damage, and then 1 life regen modifier can actually work wonders early game and make a pretty nice difference. For the actual crafting process for these early pieces of gear, just focus on revealing all 4 modifiers on an item, and then just check each mod to see if you can switch it to the priority stats I talked about, or other ones that you think look good for your build. Only really bother upgrading raw damage and perhaps an energy regen stat if needed. But you don't really need to craft so much here and consume so many resources that you need to stop and grind for more resources. But if you do get stuck on a boss or on a level, then the easiest way for you to progress forwards, if you take this method of just kind of revealing and swapping to a few main stats like damage and strength, then all you can do is just finish upgrading all of your unfinished items for a big power boost and then just crush that level. This lets you either just replace gear as you go or upgrade things when you need a power boost. For tip 4, don't be afraid to try different weapon stances. So stance, the keyword, refers to weapon type basically, like one-handers, magery, which is like your wandy, staffy things. Don't be afraid to try different stances. They're all viable and all of them are actually used on the ladder. You might see like a few more mauls, but it's actually a pretty good mix, especially on the solo ladder. It's mostly about finding a weapon and a skill that you feel most comfortable with some consideration as to kind of range and mechanics and how you activate your chosen offhand skills that we'll talk about later. Finding a stance and skill you enjoy is really the most important thing more than anything else. And don't get too hung up on the flavor text or anything. Just feel them out and see what feels nice to you. And that's only something that you can really figure out. Everyone kind of likes different skills here. And don't fret about the fact that, I've got a bunch of levels in this mastery tree already for this specific stance. I can't change now. It's actually very quick to catch up and unlock things on a new weapon that you swap to. Stance mastery levels are based on kills, not experience. Each kill has a chance to give a level, and it can feel a bit random because it is. It means that if you really want to level a stance quickly, you just head to a low-level Rupture where you can just get a ton of kills really quickly and level it up. Tip number 5 is a way that you can easily collect all the offhands you'll ever need for these offhand skills. These items are the true power in the game, and trying them all out and finding one that you like and feels powerful to you is a pretty good idea. So you can easily go and get any offhand skill you need by just doing the Rupture that lists that skill on the main continent. So if you go to the main continent page on the map, you can actually just mouse over each level and it'll show you the rewards. Even if you've already done it, you can go back there and get those exact skills. So you want to try a new skill, go there and get a whole set in one Rupture. It's super easy and quick. Since level doesn't actually affect the offhand gear at all, this even works at endgame. Tip number 6 is actually more of a discussion about how offhand skills scale and why weapon damage doesn't quite scale late game. So weapon hit damage does work really well in the early game, but it quickly drops off compared to the massive damage scaling that you can achieve with offhands, thanks to the fact that they scale with elemental damage, skill damage, damage on the actual offhands themselves, their super important powerful effects, and even the bonus damage from using the skill itself to do your attack that triggers the offhand skill. So the idea is to use your weapon stance attack to activate and scale your offhand skills. So offhands are triggered on hit, whether you're summoning lightning wolves or raining down meteors or summoning a dragon to breathe fire or whatever, you just have to hit something with a regular attack or a skill. The offhand pieces of gear stack, so not only will they increase the damage, as that damage stat on each one of them adds up, but each item with the same skill lowers the cooldown when they're equipped together. You can mix it up a bit early on, and it's kind of fun to do that, but raw power-wise currently favors stacking the same skill to benefit from reduced cooldown scaling and getting as many of them out and stacking their powers. That said, in the future, if you're watching this guide, the dev has mentioned that they plan on changing this up a bit with modifiers and skill effects that encourage using mixed powers, so I look forward to checking that out. So the purple offhands, aka legendary offhands, gain an extra enchantment power. It's really easy to craft any offhand up to purple and select one of the 2 enchantments for that skill, once you've unlocked the bench to be able to do that. They generally stack as well, so you want to get all of them enchanted to purple. These enchantment powers often scale the power level dramatically too, so they are quite important, and the sooner you can get these going, the sooner you're really going to be cooking. Ferocity of Wolves, for example, the skill that I've been using a lot this season, has the power wolves gain damage for each leap that they've done, and the other power is wolves jump 3 more times. So you can stack the leap count. I've got like 12 leaps, and you can be sure that by the final leap, they're doing a lot of extra damage at that point. Some things to know about scaling are that crit and crit damage, even from stance-specific crit and crit damage, does work for your offhand skills. So basically, like if you crit with your attack, then that damage is scaling the skill that's triggered by that crit. Weapon stance skill damage multiplier scales offhand skills created by that hit. So in the stance mastery menu that you open up with J typically, you'll see if you mouse over each skill something like 280% of normal attack damage bonus. This is a multiplier for your base damage that skill deals, right? This applies to skills from your offhands created by that hit. So you slap an enemy with a 280% multiplier skill, and the wolves that you summon with Ferocity of Wolves get that 280% as well. And that's one of the reasons why you do want to build enough energy to be able to spam your weapon skills, so you can be always benefiting from that multiplier. One thing to note that doesn't work is weapon stance damage on gear does not apply to other offhand skills. So this is things like increased damage with one-handed or increased damage with spears. This only works on the attacks, so it's fine and decently helpful very early game, but late game, this attribute, this stat is not very helpful. And the final tip for the early game, what to do if you get stuck. If you get stuck on a boss or a rupture level, then try the following. Finish crafting all of your current gear. Grab any missing rupture cards. If you've forgotten about those, don't forget. I don't know how you could, they're super fun. I'm always looking forward to the next card. Use the research table for some free levels and put some attribute points in. Try a new offhand skill. Grab a couple of levels and upgrades in the rupture before you got stuck. That's always an option. And I'll just say you're never really actually stuck in this game, as even failed attempts give XP, gems, and resources and such to upgrade in this game. You're always kind of like moving forwards. It's better than real life in that way. So, starting endgame. This is the good stuff. When you finish the main continent, you have finished the tutorial. Congratulations, good job. You did it. The game mostly expects you to find your own way from here, and it's honestly a little bit overwhelming as this game has so much stuff going on. What are all these resources for? How do I use this key? Why am I getting freaking eggs? Don't panic, I've got you. So let's talk about pushing ruptures and unlocking more things. This is everything. Make rupture level go up. This is your core goal and the fundamental of what everything else grows off of. The higher the level the rupture that you have unlocked and are currently doing combat in, the more resources, XP, and higher level loot you can get. You also get more rupture quartz for more cards. You unlock access to more and more dungeons and bosses and game features. If you ever just run out of stuff to do, you probably haven't, just push a few levels higher and you'll probably unlock something new, all the way to like level 160 at the moment. So if you're thinking you're done, you probably got a way to go. You want to push max completed ruptures without infused beetles. You'll use those for farming, I'll talk about in a moment. And if you're feeling particularly powerful, use that skip level feature. Remember, it back completes anything that you skip. So if you do 5 ruptures all at once, it'll do all 5 of them and you'll instantly be able to get yourself a card. Very fun. That's often the case after you finish a big crafting session, that you're now much more powerful and can just do 5 ruptures all at once. So this is your fundamental goal. There are plenty of other goals, don't worry, but the highest completed rupture is your core one. It's how players are compared to each other on the leaderboards. It's how you can measure your progress. Pushing is only one of the 2 kind of main goals. The second is, of course, to farm, right? We want the things to make the numbers go up. So here's what you're getting and from where in Ruptures. Elites are the most important thing overall. Every elite kill has a chance to spawn a reward, a chest, colloquially. These could be any number of things from like random tables to boxes of loot to inexplicable bookshelves. There are also golden beetles, which are basically loot goblins that will spawn many chests all at once. So good. And then the emerald beetle, even better, lets you pick the exact sort of reward you want to get, and you'll get many chests of that thing. You can pick your favorite and get tons of them. Here's a picture that shows all of the different things that can spawn. It's actually a good idea just to kind of build up a familiarity with this as you play, which it'll happen naturally as you play. Just because you will eventually start deciding to not bother with some things, especially if you're rushing the bosses. And it lets you know which things are really important to prioritize if you have like a limited time to grab something, or if something's a little bit risky to get, or so on. And then to somewhat of a lesser extent, you're also farming boss room stuff in Ruptures too. So these are monogram enchantment powers. Monograms are the way that you can craft the special enchantment powers onto your own items. So long term, those are very important to make kind of like some of the best gear. And they also give you the ability to just customize and make your character actually have the build you want. You'll also be getting time essences, which is used to craft infused time rupture beetles, which I'll talk about in a second. They're the farming things. And then of course you get some random boss loot. Okay, so infused ruptures. This is the farm mode. Infused ruptures are how you really farm. So many shiny beams of light from these ones. Normal non-infused ruptures are just for pushing, or so you can get that new max level, or if you're broke. If you're actually farming for resources or gear, you want to be doing infused ruptures, or unless you're doing dungeons or something. So you use these beetles when you go to start a rupture by clicking the beetle to empower the rupture. But Ziggy, there's no beetle here. Well, that means you don't have any beetles. So how do you get the beetles then if you don't have any? Or if you want more? Trust me, you'll always want more. Infused rupture beetles are gained as drops kind of rarely, but most commonly they're crafted at the mapstone table from bags of time essence. These are gained whenever you open a boss room, so pushing your ruptures will stock a few up so that you can then do a farm session. It's like the dev has kind of thought of this like natural gameplay loop. I don't know, maybe it's come about incidentally as they just threw so many things together and I'm looking for meaning in the clouds. I love how this game is an elegant concert of it's just so much number go up stuff happening. So what do the infused beetles actually do? They primarily juice up the loot of a rupture. They add more gold and emerald loot beetles. You'll see a lot more of those, and looty slugs. They probably do something to like the quantity of stuff you get to. I'm not exactly sure. They also do add bonus gems to the boss room, which is pretty good and important long term, especially scaling things like life from life gems. It's not a ton though, but it's still incremental number go up. They also add a few starter slugs to give you some time essence quickly at the start of the rupture to just kind of like kickstart those. They're a little bit faster. They get happening quicker. So that's pretty good. You'll do infused ruptures with the beetles and you'll get a lot more gold beetles and green beetles and just loot and stuff in general. So it's a pretty good time, and it's often tempting to do the full 10 minutes before the rupture runs out of time, just farming elites and beetles and getting lots of loot, and you totally can do that. But it is worth just kind of in that last minute or so, if you can, kill boss pretty quickly, jump into that boss room and finish it off so you can get the extra rewards from the boss room, because that tends to win out over the last minute. But sometimes if there's like 2 beetles on the screen, I'll be like, screw the boss, I'm staying here and getting maximum loot until they literally make me leave. There's a fun bit of decision making on the fly there to be done. But infused beetles actually do more, and there's actually some hidden features I'm not even going to mention in this guide, but that's for you to discover later. But the main thing that is really important here is the Fortune Tomb tokens interaction with infused beetles. So you do an infused rupture, you click the beetle, you go in, and then if you have this little purple coin, the infused ruptures get much better. This guy named Ghost will appear. He's actually one of the moderators on the Discord and is very helpful. Answered some of my questions today. They'll appear at the start and offer you a choice of 3 map modifiers randomly chosen for a coin. Some of these modifiers are very powerful, such as replace all chests with life gems. That's huge, or literally double the chests you get. Super amazing, but be careful of the downside modifiers. Some of these can be very deadly or annoying. And on that note, I will mention that pressing escape will choose none of the options. That's valid. And save your coin. This is important if the modifiers aren't very good, or if you're fishing for something specific, like you're trying to farm life gems, and you only have 1 coin currently. You can just take your coin and say, I'll see you next time, offer me some better choices next time. Do that infused rupture, try again, he'll appear again in the next one. Now to actually obtain these fortune tokens, there's a couple methods. One is from the Ancient Catacombs dungeon. You can check that in the dungeons section. There's a hidden room. The NPC Ghost is there as well. You have to bring 20k of these purple fortune fragments that you get from primarily from disenchanting items. Alternatively, you can also buy with these scrolls that you'll get late game if you have a surplus of them. And that's a decent way to get yourself some coins if you have those resources. I tend to get most of my coins from Dwarven chests. These are special chests that will only spawn in ruptures if you have the requisite key for them. The key is called the Ancient Runic Key, and they're crafted from imbued Dwarven runes. It's a very good idea to always have several of these keys on you, because the chests won't actually spawn without them, nor could you open them anyway. The chests are a very good source of coins, but also a very good source of other late game resources and stuff in general. So they're really good mixed loot chests with some spicy loot in them. And of course, you'll occasionally get the odd fortune token from like a dungeon or some other random reward set or something. But mostly from those Dwarven chests and from Ancient Catacombs. In terms of the rupture farming timeline, when you first kind of get to endgame, you'll try and do some infused ruptures every so often. You'll probably get enough beetles to do those every few ruptures. And then later game, you'll probably get enough beetles to do infused ruptures almost constantly when you're farming. And then late game is when you start to get more of those fortune tokens. Maybe rupture level 80 plus. That's when you can maybe expect to start getting these more consistently. So then you can have the map modified infused ruptures, super juiced maps basically. Okay, so what about other endgame activities when you first get to endgame? One of the hugest things you can do is upgrading to an endgame pet. So at some point during the tutorial, you would have gotten this little guy that summons green fields that give you a small heal. That guy is really weak. You want to replace him as soon as possible when you get to endgame, and you will, sooner or later, find a cage, and then you can free a little dragonling baby from that cage and find a real one. Basically, they're all elemental conversion pairings. They'll do things like your fire skills can scale with lightning damage and so on, and there's all the different variants of those for the 3 elements. These things are very powerful and super important for any build. They let you scale with more damage stats, for one. But once you get an elemental pairing that you think you're going to like, for the skill that you've kind of maybe started to settle on, you can take this little dragonling baby to ELYSIA'S dungeon, more on that later. It's available pretty early on and starts at a low level, level 45. And when you defeat this boss, you can go in and add a power to this pet. You can actually just add all of the powers. You don't have to make any choices here. So just run several ELYSIA'S until you get all of the powers. They aren't mutually exclusive, and they're mostly all very good. Huge amounts of damage, exploding enemies, and so on. All good stuff. You can actually keep running ELYSIA after that point, and every time you do it, you'll get 5% increased elemental damage of the primary element as well. So you can kind of infinitely scale the damage on these little pets, albeit at a slow rate after that. So another thing that's really important is getting the belt for the skill that you've chosen. Belts are basically like offhands. They're primarily found in dungeons though. You can get 3 of them per run, randomly chosen. And their powers stack with the other offhands that you have. Even though it only shows 3 pips on the UI for whatever reason, you can see the cooldown and damage change when you add the belt in there as well. There's some diminishing return on the 4th stack of a skill typically, but the enchantment effect's also a stack, and that's the main reason to use 4. Another thing you're starting to do when you get to endgame, once you unlock the monogramming feature and get to a high enough level that you're starting to use it, this is when you start seeing gear around level 20, but you'll start collecting and keep collecting monograms until you have them all and everything that you want. So monograms are the way that you can craft enchantments onto your gear once again. Now, an important thing to know though is that each item type's monograms are target farmable. They're in specific locations. So for example, relic, braces, amulets, boots, and helmet, the main ones, those are available each specifically from a certain endgame island. So you can identify, I'll put the link in the description, the location that has relics, and go farm the monogram that you're missing from your relic in that specific location. Now you just kill the final boss and then collect the monogram, that's what spawns it, the golden statue. And you can just spam easier ruptures for this as well, for fast boss kills. Weapons need to be level 20 plus for enchantments to actually be crafted on them. So you don't really need to start worrying about that until then, but they can be very powerful long term, as they effectively give you another skill stat. So weapon enchantment monograms are from dungeons, like Underground Enclave and Lodhur. If you do lots of different dungeons, you will start collecting those. It's one of the reward for a lot of the random dungeons in the game. Rings are kind of late game. You'll typically get them from Mardoth Hinterlands for some reason, but only if the Rupture is infused. So use your beetles in Mardoth Hinterlands until you get the ring monogram enchantments that you want. Rings also need to be level 20 plus for this too, so don't really worry about it before that point. Now on weapon enchants, getting a good enough weapon to craft with competitive damage is actually pretty tricky. But when you do find one with double the normal damage, so just like look at all the swords you find, for example, and you'll notice occasionally one of them will have like twice as much damage as the other, despite being the same. That's because there's actually a small chance, I think it's like 20% or something, that an item can drop with like effectively a doubled stat. It's similar to what can happen with crafting later on. These are the ones that you want to keep an eye out for, and then craft as legendaries, because then they'll be comparable to purples that you can use that typically don't have enchantments on them and can't be crafted. The enchantments you get on weapons are the offhand enchantment powers, so you can stack another offhand power enchantment on top. So for example, my wolves from Ferocity of Wolves leap 12 additional times, and each leap does more damage thanks to 3 offhands, a belt, and then the weapon modifier. So these powers are typically worth getting, even if it does mean trading off a little bit of raw damage from like a purple weapon that you've got. The other thing you want to start looking into once you get to endgame, you'll unlock this at Rupture level 40, is the Elven faction passive tree, the harp in the back of your fortress. So yes, there's actually another passive skill tree in addition to your main one. And this has some important utility things on it and some important farming things on it, but also just some character power too. So once you unlock this, once you've cleared Rupture level 40, dump a ton of resources into the Envoy. Talk to this guy and just give him everything. The early investment will feel a little painful because you won't be able to craft for a minute. So maybe do whatever crafting you feel like you need to do first. but it will pay off pretty quickly, trust me. After I've dumped all my initial resources and then started build backing up, in the future what I continue to do, because you want to continue getting passives for this, and the way that you get passives is to keep giving more resources to the envoy, in addition to crafting to at least extent does also give you some XP for this skill tree. I'll typically dump animal parts in here pretty regularly, along with some excess crafting resources that I have like way more of. So if I have like 10k of everything, but then for some reason I have 30k of a certain metal, I'll give them a bunch of that metal, just to even it out. I do like to avoid using the zone shards, crystals, orbs, things, that section of resources, because those are used to kind of craft dungeon keys and stuff. So for the actual tree itself, your initial priorities should be to rush all the crafting nodes ASAP. There's some really good stuff in here to gain or save resources, but even more importantly, for your power progression, there are things here that make items better for crafting. They'll drop with more forging potential, and you'll gain things like a chance of not spending forging potential, and also a chance of getting like a sweet double roll, which can be very powerful. It's also worthwhile pretty early on, once you've got the crafting ones, getting some XP investment. Go at least to like the 20% node, and some people like to grab the table stuff. And then long term, you also really want to get the gem drop nodes and the flint and the stone. So now this section is the help me, I'm stuck mid-endgame. This happens around Rupture level 50 to 65 for some people, and it's generally because you've missed some major or a couple minor power boosting features that you're just not taking advantage of. Usually it's from like a dungeon that you didn't really know is a thing or you didn't know how to access. It's pretty common for players to kind of keep pushing Ruptures and just like, because they're not sure what to do, and not realize what other content's actually available to them and how to access it. I did this a lot starting out. So a big one is no endgame pet. If you haven't yet gotten and upgraded an endgame elemental pet, you are missing a huge amount of damage scaling. So you want to get one of those if you've been wondering what those little guys are about. The healing one is not good, do not keep it. And then go upgrade it fully versus ELYSIA'S LAIR. I think that's one thing that people miss. People do ELYSIA'S LAIR once, or they just don't know about it, and they don't get those extra powers, but they have the pet equipped typically. The pet is substantially better once upgraded, and you can get all of those powers. And don't be afraid to run it even more than that for the bonus damage and the lots of gold that the dungeon gives. They give a lot of elemental damage, more flexible scaling, better AoE clear through the explosions, and the very easily overlooked 1% damage per extra inventory slot, which you can stack on the passive tree. There's actually tons of increased damage to be gotten there that's written on the tree as extra inventory slots, which doesn't sound very important, but it's actually damage. The next thing that gets people stuck around mid-game is the not crafting. They alter and add some affixes, but they don't really push the important ones as far as they can. This starts to become important around this point, and if you're not doing it, and that gear is undercrafted, then you will start to get stuck maybe around that 65 level. You'll want to unlock all the Elven faction tree crafts, get those ASAP, and you want to be focusing on flat damage, crit mods, a bit of energy regen so you can spam your skills, make sure you're able to do that, and skill for your offhand skill damage, or elemental damage for that skill. Those are the most important. In order of priority for which thing to upgrade once you've like selected all the best mods you can on an item, damage, crit damage, so you get 100% crit chance and as much crit damage as you can. Regen if you need it, and then your skill / elemental damage. Honestly, everything else like armor, you don't really need to upgrade that. Health, you'll get typically through gems and other ways. Attack speed is not super useful on gear. Those things are all secondary unless your build specifically calls for them. Honestly, if you put damage on an item and use all the crafting specs to upgrade that damage as far as you can, that can often just be enough on its own. See the refined build sections a bit later for further crafting advice. The other thing that tends to get people stuck is they haven't re-rolled their Rupture cards. So they just picked random cards as they were leveling, and they have a disjointed mess of a deck of cards. You will unlock Rupture card re-rolls as you go, and this makes it much easier to rebuild a better set of card buffs than the ones that you picked up while leveling. So go respec and rebuild your card deck. I do this every so often. If I change builds a bunch, or if I think I can just roll for something better as a gamble, or certainly if I've progressed a bunch and unlocked an extra reroll. Whenever I unlock an extra reroll, I tend to respec this. The most important thing is to try and get a few cards picked 4 times. So if you don't know, you'll see that little 0 out of 3 there. If you pick them 3 times and then pick them again a 4th time, it doubles the power of the entire set. So that means for 4 points, effectively, you get 6 cards worth of value. So 2 for free. Very good, especially if you get that on something chunky. I will actually mention, I mentioned armor's not very good on gear. Armor and damage reduction on cards is actually very strong, especially early on. You can be ridiculously tanky if you build a set of the doubled fully 4 invested cards that are like armor with armor scaling. But generally a lot of the damage and primary attribute stuff, if you're built properly for that, can do a lot here as well. Now, late in game, let's get on to some juicy stuff. In order to take on Rupture level 80 plus content, you will need at this point a more refined build. Where exactly you get stuck will depend on just how refined your build is so far. So if you're well past 80 before you start to struggle, then well done. So the most important thing initially is cohesive major build elements. So this is the things on your character all work together. So this is offhand powers and offhand skills that fit your build. So they work well with the skill that you're using. So like they work well at close range if you're doing close range stuff, for example. It's a very fast proccing skill, but you're using a slow attack, might not work very well. You'll be missing a bunch of procs and your skill will be very ineffective, for example. So you want to try and match those things together. So experiment and find a good pairing of like weapon attacks and your offhand skills. You'll also want item enchantments that start to synergize, not just a random collection of them. This is where collecting monograms and actually crafting your own enchantments starts to play a big role. Stat investment will also want to match the enchantments and the passive tree. You'll also want to match your pet to effectively scale your elemental damage. And you also want most of your gear affixes to be the good ones. Your primary stacking affix, damage, crit. You'll probably want to get your crit to 100% and start stacking crit damage at this point. So a popular approach to building a cohesive, refined build at late endgame is stat stacking. This works by making high investment in one specific stat, all or many of your points invested into one thing, coupled with enchantments that give bonus effects for having a lot of that stat. Then you can also get crafted modifiers that actually give you percentage increases of that stat. So let's say you get a ton of agility, and then you get items that give you like 10 or 20% increased agility, maximizing the number go up, right, of a specific number. You'll get minimum to no investment in other stats except where needed, like maybe a little bit of endurance to get you enough energy regen if you need it. So examples of this include things like helmets that say for every 5 agility, get 1 base damage point. So this makes agility like strength, it gives you damage now. That alone is maybe not enough to make agility worth main stacking, but you can also get other modifiers like every 10 points in agility, gain damage bonus. You can get a similar thing on rings, for example. It's effectively about making one stat do so much and give you so much damage and also be increased by so much that it is the best thing to spend your points in because it gives you so much more than anything else or than spreading them out. So this requires those gear enchantments to be stacked a few different times and to be working together in concert. That's kind of the tricky hurdle, is getting a couple items with those gear enchantments that are also good enough to wear in the first place. There's also similar adjacent things, like for example, stacking as much life health as possible and getting things like gain-based damage equal to 1% of your max health, for example. That can be very strong. And you can combine that with things like for every 10 in a certain stat, gain extra max HP or increased max HP, for example. So you get like a back and forth scaling there. An alternative approach that gives you a lot of damage, that's a little bit different here, is max energy stacking. So there's a relic enchant double max energy, and you can get a helmet enchantment to go with this. That's 2 base damage for every energy above 100. So then you get max energy on gear, which then gets doubled, giving you a ton of flat damage. So you can get so much flat damage for your build there, and then scale that with a few extra stat scaling things on top. Now, another big thing to not underestimate for late game scaling is the Dwarven Fossil with those gems, right? If you're just picking up the random gems as you go and not really thinking about it much, you'll get like slowly increasing numbers in here, and it's pretty easy to look at it and think, oh, that doesn't look that powerful. But take a look at what some people's endgame ones can look like. You can get ridiculous amounts of stuff here. 34,000 max health, for example, obviously very strong with damage from max health. Those sorts of numbers are achieved with specific strategies for farming those gems or by taking advantage of certain dungeons that give you a ton of gems. More on that stuff in the dungeon section. So it can actually make a really big difference. And at some point, some focus on gem farming is going to push you deeper into the late game when other methods of progression have stalled out, like you're not finding any new gear upgrades or something. These numbers will keep going up. Particularly important because not only does it give you another avenue for damage scaling, but like it gives you survivability so that you can focus other things on damage, and that's scaling life with gems. You can actually get so much life on gems that eventually life on gear seems kind of pointless because it's a drop in the bucket compared to what you can get on that Dwarven Fossil. So infused ruptures and dungeons will give you some nice max health gems for your fossil. They stack up slowly over time. It's nice. You can get a few hundred that way maybe, which will help supplement your character's survivability. But really, fortune tokens in infused ruptures are how you get the big money. One option that will appear every so often is to replace all containers with health gem containers. And if you see this, take it, as long as you can handle the downside. This makes it so that you can spend an entire time farming a rupture and just get thousands of health gems and get yourself a big chunk of extra life for your character. Then once you get so much base health this way, because that is flat base max health, right? You can combine it with an enchantment for percentage increased life when stacking your chosen main stat and also damage for max life, and then you're really cooking. There's obviously a lot more to it, but I don't want to, again, spoil like meta stuff here, because experimenting and figuring a lot of this stuff out and how you want to build your character specifically is a lot of the fun of this game. So now let's talk about nearly all of the specific dungeons. I'm not going to spoil the last two, but there will be spoilers for the rest of them here. Dungeons all give some nice loot, gems, monogram, enchantments, and other things that you want. So doing them generally is a good idea. They're nearly all worth it, though some of them will become a little bit obsolete as you progress past them. And some of them do kind of compete with each other a little bit, so there's some consideration for that when making keys for them. So these first few dungeons that I'll detail here are the ones that I consider most important or fundamentally important because they give you something that you really need or you can't get elsewhere, or they just give you a ton of power progression. So we've mentioned it a bunch already, but ELYSIA'S lair. This is at level 45. You first gain access to this. In this dungeon, you kill the mama dragon to make your baby dragon stronger. New monster. These powers for the pet are super strong, and you want to do this as soon as possible. So as soon as you unlock it and you have your pet, go in there and do it as many times as you can. Even try and go specifically out of your way to get more keys. And here's how you do that. To gain access to ELYSIA'S lair, you need ELYSIA'S key, which is made from the blood of her babies. For real. Devs, why? You grind up unwanted pet, mere dragon babies, in the disenchanter for vials of blood. 5 babies gives 10 dragonling blood, which gives you a key at the ancient rune table. There's another way. You can get them before they hatch. Again, really, I'm not joking. Ruptures sometimes give you eggs. If you take those eggs and get 20 of them, at the very bottom, for some reason, hidden away in the advanced gem anvil, very easy to miss, you can make a key to ELYSIA'S from 20 eggs. So the purpose of the ELYSIA'S lair is to unlock new powers on your elemental pets, very, very important, but also infinitely scale small amounts of damage on the pets. It gets monograms and some very other nice resources. Kind of importantly though, this is actually one of the best sources of gold in the game. You get like 150k, 200k plus gold as this scales up per run. And you can actually run many of them quite quickly late game. So it's a lot of gold. When you need 1 million gold for one of those like fortress upgrades or something, you come to a few of these and you'll have it. This dungeon and a few others, I believe actually, they level scale up by 1 each time you complete them. So though it starts at level 45, and it'll still say level 45 on the map, when you go in it might say level 51 if you've run it 6 times. So it does scale the loot up. You get more gold, you get better items. Pretty slowly though. You will level faster than the dungeon does. Maybe eventually if you're really grinding it might start to catch up. ELYSIA'S will stay relevant long term. I still run ELYSIA'S now at like level 426, doing rupture levels plus 100. Gold, more damage, it's all good stuff. Great dungeon, top of the list for most important. Ancient Catacombs is level boosted treasure. It's level 22, but not really. This dungeon, quote unquote, is literally just a treasure trove of high level loot that's better than yours. I'm not kidding, it's better than yours. The stuff you're wearing is garbage. Go into this and you will get yourself some upgrades, quite simply. To gain access to the Ancient Catacombs, you craft the key at the mapstone table out of 30 of each of these stones that you'll slowly collect from Ruptures. This is a pretty grindy method for doing this, but eventually can add up. More often, you'll probably get them from your daily mission. Completing 10 Ruptures, you can go turn in your daily mission here, and you'll get yourself a key. So every day you can go do this once and upgrade your gear. And this kind of actually works really well for most gamers' schedules, I think. If you play for like a couple hours a day or something, you can jump in, do your quests, and get a key, and get a nice power boost every day. Pretty satisfying loop there. You can also get keys from random drops, especially with the Sticky Fingers node in the Elven passive tree. So the purpose of this dungeon is that it's very powerful for progression. The way that it works is that it gives you loot that is 20 rupture levels higher than the highest level rupture that you have completed. As such, before you go into Catacombs, try and unlock the highest level Rupture you can, even if you have to really push for it. So it's 20 Rupture levels higher, which means the items tiers might be like 5 higher or something potentially, depending. You'll get other stuff from it too. It's got lots of monograms in the secret room. So when you go into the first area, but instead of going left to over the bridge, you can break the wall directly in front of you. And inside there is a secret room with more loot and some NPCs. You'll also get some pretty important resources for future dungeons here. Ancient catacomb fragments for the ancient catacombs, I'll talk about in a second. And the infused Dwarven runes. There's also 2 NPCs here to buy the very important fortune tokens using fortune fragments. These are the ones used when infusing Ruptures to add map modifiers. Very important, so you want to buy those whenever you can. And from the Elven Ambassador, you can also buy Ambassador keys, believe it or not. You buy these with Elven fragments. These are used to access the lost GALFELUNE capital thing, which is pretty important late game. You can also buy some fortune tokens here for scrolls. You can do that if you have an excess of them. Run the dungeon, buy whatever you can from those guys, kill all the slugs, get all the loot, and then go out and have yourself a massive crafting session with the high level gear that you've gotten. It's pretty hard to come out of here without an upgrade as long as you pushed your Ruptures higher since the last time you did it. So on that note, the Ancient Catacombs, lower layer this time. So this one is level 70. It will happen quite a bit later. You'll go in and you'll defeat the Trickster boss. Well, you'll try to. And then you'll free a friend that'll train up your skills. Every time you complete a regular catacombs, you get 1 ancient catacomb fragment. When you get 5 of those, you get a key. So you do 5 regular catacombs, you gain access to the ancient catacombs. The purpose of it really is that extra skill tree level point per run. So the regular cap from just leveling up your character is 199 points to put in the tree, which gives you, a good chunk of it, most of it. But you can keep getting more with this dungeon specifically. So that's obviously really nice long term. So this one's obviously pretty late game as it takes 5 catacombs before you gain access, but by the time you do get there, that's when it's kind of getting relevant. The next one is Gravedigger's Cove. So there's an infestation at the bank or something. You go in and pretend to be the exterminator. I think this is like a heist movie. And the bank manager will let you in to fumigate the vaults. Obviously, you rob everything while you're in there. So you go into these rooms, kill a bunch of bugs, and steal a bunch of treasure. The way that you gain access to Gravediggers is by using the key to Gravediggers, believe it or not, on the Rupture map. You'll get one from a daily mission each day, but you can also craft them from the handful of bones items from chests and Ruptures that'll appear every now and then. There's a specific chest that drops them. You won't get access to this too often, but it is pretty powerful in terms of character progression. And you do want to make the most of it when you actually go in here. So I actually have a special section on method for this one. Usually I let most of you figure these dungeons out for yourselves and how to fight the bosses and everything. But this one, particularly, you want to really extract some extra value from it. And I think if you don't know how to do it, you'll go in and you'll be like, that was lame. So the method here, this is firstly, it's a non-dangerous dungeon. So there's not really much risk of losing this, but it's more about the fact that you won't get many gems if you do it poorly. So you want to go to the guy in the middle as quickly as you can and grab the imbued Dwarven rune in the small chest behind him. And then you want to talk to him and he'll open a room. So the rooms are shielded. Look for the room that he's opened and quickly rush in there as quickly as you can. Smash your way in through the walls, kill all of the monsters in there and keep killing them as they spawn until he tells you to leave. You can try and be ready to leave as it's kind of winding down and then leave as soon as you can. Rush back into the middle, talk to him again, and then go into the next revealed room and do this again as quickly as you can. Repeat it as many times as you can and get yourself a bunch of gems. Now, some things that help here are having a good AoE skill, for example, Ground Blast on Majory is really good, and Majory also has a dash skill that moves you around fast, so Majory is pretty good for farming this. And the purpose really is lots of gems. I'm talking a lot. If you get 1,000 of each gem, then you've done pretty well. That's a pretty good thing to aim for. So some very good character progression each time you do it, an actual notable amount. You'll do it whenever you can. So speaking of gems, the next one I want to talk about that's really important is the Lost GALFELUNE capital. This one is important very late game, especially because to really take advantage of it, it needs some scaling on the Elven tree. So this is the lost city of the elves, and for some reason it's just a bunch of shiny rocks. I don't understand, but go and smash shiny rock, number go up. Don't think about it too much, okay? To gain access to this, you require the ambassador key that we picked up from the catacombs. So you buy those from the vendor in the ancient catacombs. And then the portal will actually spawn inside Ruptures when you have a key, but you also must have allocated the Lost Path node in the Elven tree. That's what makes this actually appear in the first place. Now, you can chain repeat this actually once you do gain access until you run out of keys. So once you've like fully cleared and picked up all the gems and everything, you can then go and do another one straight off the bat. Just click any of the blue things and go into the next one. So really the purpose of the GALFELUNE capital is to get tons of gems, stone and flint, especially with the mining and gem nodes and the digging deeper passive to scale the quantity in the Elven tree. So that's why it's kind of like really late game, because you put a bunch of points into that digging deeper node and that scales it up apparently. The idea is that this will give you like a huge source of stone and flint, so to actually craft notable amounts of armor and damage gems. So that allows you to get some late game infinite incremental power scaling effectively. There's also one more thing here that you'll get. You get these little coins called Relics of the First Forger. They drop and give you access to the endgame final secret boss that I'll tell you nothing more about, except that it's at level 160 Rupture. But if you're trying to figure out how to get access to that, this is how. So here's some of the other dungeons that you'll run into. These all give good stuff, but they aren't critical. So the Underground Enclave is level 50. You go in and kill the Scorpion King before we all remember how bad the CGI was in that movie. You gain access by using 2 Dwarven runes to craft a key at the rune anvil, and it's on the map. The purpose is to get some purple stance weapons. You can get a rare Scorpion mount, apparently. It's a pretty rare drop. There's weapon enchant monograms you can get here. And overall, it's kind of worth doing when you first get to this level, and if your level 50 Rupture loot is relevant to you. But the infused Dwarven runes are used in a few other places, and they're better spent elsewhere long term, so this one will become obsolete. Next up is Min Lodhur, and I'll just tell you, you can fall off the edge. Don't ask me how I know. Gain access by using 3 imbued Dwarven runes to make a key at the rune anvil, and it's on the map by the snow. The purpose is purple stuff with high damage rolls, weapon enchantment monograms again, and some belts. It's overall worth doing, again, just like the other one, when you first get there or when the level is relevant, but the infused Dwarven runes are better spent elsewhere again. Shadowforge is at level 65. The Gorge speedrun meta is back. This one is an unusual one. You'll kill wolf packs and then again and again and again and again. And just when you think it's infinite, yeah, I keep questioning myself every time I run it. It's like, right, wait, is this actually infinite? You'll get to the end and then you'll get lots of stuff. You gain access to this through the key to the Shadowforge. And this is made from 2 fragments from Kill Monster Daily quest. So that effectively means that you can do it once every 2 days. And I believe that's the only way of gaining access to it. Its purpose is just to be a limited access dungeon that gives you lots of resources akin to a decent Rupture and tons of monogram enchants. So it's a good way of filling those out. And lots of belts at the end. It's kind of just like a good catch-up dungeon for if you're missing any of those things, like you're having trouble getting belts or certain enchants, you'll have a good chance of getting them here every 2 days. So Shadowforge is good, you'll do it when you have access. Harmonian Olympus at level 80 is a cool fight, I'm sorry. You can also fall off the edge here too, it so happens. Access is gained to this by making a key with 3 infused Dwarven runes at the rune anvil, and it's on the map by the snow as well. The purpose is to be a spicy boss fight that gives you weapon monogram unlocks, and 2 racks actually filled with fancier than average purple stance gear, so this is where the purple gear starts to get a little bit more interesting. So these items have preset stats for weapons typically. You can get a variety of different things here, and they are better than moderate rares typically, but they can be a bit hard for them to beat a really well crafted rare. Those will typically win out, especially because those more often have enchantments, but the purple stance items here have a small chance of actually having enchantments, which is breaking the rules. Purples aren't supposed to have enchantments, but sometimes they can, but that is drop only from these sorts of dungeons. That said, this is kind of similar to Min Lodhur and the Underground Enclave. It's good when you first get here for getting yourself some gear that is level relevant and powerful, but it becomes mostly obsolete once you scale past it. Bridge of Demigods at level 100 is a spice fort filled with loot slugs, gems, and loot. Also, there's like a Council of Elders that wants to kill you. Access is gained with, I believe, 6 scrolls from each endgame region and some infused Dwarven runes. It's also on the map near the snow. Now, the purpose of this one is that it actually gives you a ton of XP from killing the boss. Like, so much. I got 23 levels when I killed this boss the first time. So, good level up. It also gives you fancy high-level purple stance gear, so like you'll see some very fancy ones here. So these can be some potential very high DPS weapons, and the purples here indeed can have enchantments on them, so you can there's some chase gear to be had here. A properly rolled purple for your build with the right enchantment is kind of the big kahuna potentially. Also, fragments of a key to the level 125 dungeon that I'm not spoiling is in here as well. Bridge of Demigods is effectively a big endgame dungeon with some big chase item potential from Lucky Purples, and it's also how you get access to the big Uber dungeons after. One more one that's actually kind of important but a bit strange is the Hourglass Rupture. This is a bit different to most dungeons or bosses. It's level variable. It ranges from question mark like 30 or something to level 100. This is the, why is there an hourglass in front of me? Why is there an hourglass in my fortress? Also the dungeon that is, why did I get one shot when last time I fought this guy, I one shot him dungeon. So you gain access to this by killing sand giants that will just spawn rarely in Ruptures. And when you or your fellowship members kill a sand giant, all of the fellowship members in your fellowship get an hourglass sitting in front of them, even in the fortress. So sometimes you'll be sitting there crafting and there'll be an hourglass there and you can go in and do it. You don't need a key, just go in. Now, some important tips here is, it's probably not worth leaving an infused rupture for the hourglass, but you can kite the sand giant into the boss room if you can do that without killing them. Finish the rupture, killing the sand giant in the process while killing the boss, and then you'll spawn the hourglass in the boss room, and you can do it at the end after you've gotten all of your loot and finished the rupture. Or if you're not doing the boss, even easier, do the rest of the rupture and then do the hourglass in like the last 30 seconds, and you won't miss too much. An even more important note is the reason why sometimes you one-shot him and he one-shots you other times is because the level is random. But you can see that in the top left of the screen. If you go into a level 100 one and you're not doing level 100 content, you might get bonked. Make sure to check, especially in hardcore. You'll get some XP books and some random loot, but there's also a chest that has like random rare stuff and dungeon keys in it. So things and shards and stuff like that. It's just before exit, this chest. So it can actually have some pretty rare things in it, including like 1 in 100-ish chance maybe of energy regen fossils. You might not have even knew they existed. I didn't until I saw these. So they give you flat energy regen on your fossil, and eventually if you get enough of these, you don't need it anywhere else. So that's a pretty big deal. So you're probably going to want to do the Hourglass Rupture whenever it comes up, but sometimes you'll go in and it'll be level 100 and you'll be like, this isn't even worth trying. All right, one final one I want to mention, the Tomb of Fortune. So those fortune keys, those little coins, we know those are very important, right? They allow you to add special modifiers to your infused ruptures. You want to use the coins for that, not this. All right, maybe you want to try your hand at it, but this is the, oh, it's only level 1. This must be easy dungeon. Don't even think about it. Basically, you have to like try and make it past this death room filled with traps that will murderize you, and you will get treasure beyond my knowledge. As in, I don't know what the treasure is because I couldn't do it. I tried a few times and I ran out of tokens, and the tokens are too hard to get and too valuable. I'm not doing it anymore. The fortune tokens really are likely best spent on infused rupture modifiers. Those are amazing, and also like pretty guaranteed to give you some good stuff. That said, apparently the Tomb of Fortune can pretty regularly, maybe like 1 in 4, give you energy regen gems for your fossils. So obviously that's really good. That's amazing. But that's only if you can complete it. And I'll just say this, look at the leaderboards. The leaderboards show how many dungeons of each dungeon type the top players have completed. Look how many the top players have completed of this dungeon. it's often 1 or none. You use those coins in your ruptures. So the final bosses, the aspirational content, again, I'm not going to spoil. There's 2. I'll just say 1 is at level 125, and then there's something else at Rupture 160. So just know that there are some big things you can push to see if you can even get there, and then kill the bosses. Now, kind of one final thing here is the fellowship and guild system. So, well, you can't like party up with this people in this game. It's got kind of like some good kind of community vibe, multiplayer elements kind of plugged into it. Fellowships are effectively a guild that you can join with your friends, or you can join a popular fellowship through the Discord, and they provide some pretty powerful benefits and a little bit of cute extra content as well. So, for example, when anyone kills a slug, everyone in the guild gets a stacking XP and power buff. And some enchantment buffs actually even buff your fellow members or contribute to the fellowship in some ways. Like even things like giving your buddies XP and loot, for example. So the map near Steelex, the fellowship NPC guy, has access to a few level different versions of an Elven dojo boss fight, effectively. The Kingdom of a Chorus, it's called. The key is actually gained from any member killing XP slugs, and when you get 250 stacks of it, I believe, it kind of like resets the slug buff, and then you get a key. The towns have like a pretty challenging boss fight in the dojo in there, mostly because it's a pretty scary boss in tight quarters. And every 2 runs, you can also use the things you loot from their sacred tree that you just destroy and they don't even mind. to buy some purple stance boots from the people just milling about. The names match who they're for, so if you're doing one-handers, talk to the duelist. These can actually be pretty decent if the level is good for you, and they can roll enchants as well, apparently. You'll also get some gems and resources, nothing too major there. It's just a little decent bonus that you don't specifically have to invest anything into, like you'll just get these keys if you're in a fellowship. But if you're not playing fellowship, you're doing solo, you're not missing too much here. Like this is nothing you can't really get anywhere else. Just keep in mind that boss is a little spicy and hardcore. For guilds, talk to Steelex to invite people via their account name on the escape menu there. Anyone in a guild can currently invite anyone else. The guilds level up as members get kills, which unlocks access to the higher level versions of those Acorus Kingdom fights. And every level also adds 5 member slots, I believe. It starts at something like 40. There's currently no UI to kind of like communicate some of this stuff because it's a little bit bare bones still, so hopefully that gets updated over time. I will mention the fellowship leaderboard and the solo leaderboard are separate, obviously, because there's some pretty substantial buffs to being in a fellowship. You will be stronger and you'll progress faster. And if you ever join a fellowship, you cannot place on the solo leaderboard anymore. That obviously keeps things fair. But fellowships are really fun and it fosters a nice community vibe when you and your mates are giving each other buffs and loot constantly. So this was a lot. But if you want to learn more specific things, here's where you can find some additional information. Now, firstly, the leaderboards in the escape menu, you can learn a lot about how you build your character from. You can't say like they're specific how they've crafted their gear and things, but it's enough info to give you an idea of the general build picture and you can figure it out from there. The official Discord is linked in the main menu as well, and it has some great pinned guides. It's also got a really nice, helpful community, and you can share feedback about the game there too. There's also a good wiki being worked on. It's the new and the best, but it's pretty hard to find on Google, so I'll link it in the description. And then, of course, you can ask me any questions you have in the comments below, please do. Or check out some of the other great Dwarven Realms content creators. I recommend I Do Damage, for example. It's got a lot of good videos. I hope you've enjoyed this guide as much as I've enjoyed making it, which is a lot, but not as much as I'm going to enjoy sleeping when it's done. That's it for now. I'm CGD. Thanks for watching.